My special guest here, Henry Githaiga. You were so bomb last week. You had to come back again and just school us on a couple of things. And welcome to the show.
Good to be back.
You know, there's something about this studio. It's just positive energy, and it's always a good time. That sugar spice into everything nice. And you don't mince your words. That's why everyone connects with you. You're all about the money. Henry Githaiga, ladies and gentlemen, live on the Spice Drive. And we've got an interesting treadmill topic, and it's all about buying a home or renting a house. There's the actual dream. There's what you dream about, and then what's practical and the plan. In our family, we have the wish list, and then we have the long term, and then the maybe. We separate these things, and we try to be realistic so we don't get high blood pressure. So a lot of the comments here are all about, I wish I could just own my own home.
I think the big problem that everybody has is they have not decided the season and the time that they need the home.
The season and the time.
Yeah, because everybody wants a big home and all this kind of thing. But is it possible in Nairobi? No. So when you look at the property markets, you feel discouraged. You feel, I can never own a home. So you start saying, oh, these things are for rich people and that kind of thing. But once you retire, do you need to be in Nairobi? That's the other question. So it depends on the season of life you're in. So if you are in big cities where the property is really expensive, rent the house. If you're moving up country and you're moving on in age and you're preparing to retire, buy the house. But before you buy the house, make sure you have what we call a passive income. It makes no sense for you to live in your house, but you're always broke. So the cost of building a house is also quite high, depending on what you're looking at. I've seen the average cost... so far, I've seen 3-bedroom, 4 bedrooms, around 4.5 million to build the house with a lot of accessories. If you knock that down to remove some of the accessories, tiles and this kind of thing, you may come down all the way to about 3 million shillings. Yeah. But you have to ask yourself, even if you're retiring, is that, if you don't have a passive income or money coming in, then that 3 million, is it better used generating more money or living in your house? And the problem with owning a house is until you sell it, you never know the value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen that come up on the timeline, when you try to sell it eventually. Things change. Currently, the trends have also changed. I've seen a lot of people pushing back to that plan of buying a house in the city. As the couple of months we've seen, all over the press, people are moving out of the city. People are willing to try something different and it shouldn't be the capital. What is it about Nairobi that makes people feel like it's a dream to own a house? Well, I want to be able to do yoga and still own a house instead of renting one. Yeah. But the conversation is mostly in Nairobi, forget it. It's don't even bother buying a house in Nairobi.
Well, it depends on how you look at it, because I've seen some people who buy the house, but because the rental prices are really high, they rent it out and move to a smaller house where they're paying a bit of that money for rent, but knowing that when they need the house, it's available. But the reason why Nairobi sounds like a dream is because this is where we live and work. Yeah, there's that hustle and bustle of the city. I mean, where you work right now is near Nairobi, so you can't live in, say, up Kakamega or a different county and fly in every morning to work. So what determines the attractiveness of Nairobi is where a lot of people work here. So you feel like you want to own a home here. And most people don't like their landlords. I'd really, I want to be a landlord one day, but I hope I'm not going to be as despised.
You're not those ones. Earlier this year, we saw a lot of top stories. And this is the one time the landlords were making headlines, where some of them had to reduce the rent so that they can retain, the tenants that were there. And it must have been a headache. I mean, it's hard being a landlord as well.
Yeah, okay. Actually, if you think about it nobody thought about it from the landlord's perspective. Yes. A lot of people are saying, I have gotten a pay cut at work. It is so unfair. Yeah. But when you ask the landlord to cut your rent, it's his pay cut. So there is sort of a duopoly that nobody sees when you look at rent. So you say, oh, my landlord has refused to cut my rent, yet my office has reduced my income. You're not happy that you got a pay cut. You're asking someone else to take a pay cut. So they also have to consider. And then you'll find a lot of landlords are still paying the debt that came with developing the house. Building a house is not cheap.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd advise people who want to build in future, you may not need to build or own the house now, but buy the land now, because the land appreciates, the building on it may not appreciate as much. So for example, someone was talking about building up country, then buy the land up country while it's still affordable. Because what you'll find is if you don't buy that land now, by the time you're ready to retire, that land is so expensive that it's locked you out of the market.
Right.
So one of the best plans to do is, if you have the land available in a place like Nairobi, instead of building a house to live in, build rental so that they give you passive income.
Right.
And leave some space for your own house.
Right.
If you're buying land now, buy enough land knowing that the land will appreciate, and know that you can divide some of that land to kick off some of the costs that will be associated with building your own house. Then there's the option that a lot of people tend to take, which is a mortgage.
Right.
Now you must be very clever about a mortgage, because it is a loan at the end of the day.
Right.
And I've done some basic, you can use the Kenya Bankers Association interest rate calculator. You pick any bank and you say, for example, we were speaking about 4.5 million being the cost of a house.
Yes.
The average cost of land, maybe a bit outside Nairobi, is about for a quarter an acre, say 2 million. So if you're going to build a 4.5 million shilling house plus 2 million, that's 6.5 billion. If you put that in that interest calculator and say you already own the land, so you're building at 4.5 million, so you'll have to pay about 10%, which is 400K before you get the loan. You look at how much you will repay at the end of your mortgage, say in 10 years, you'll be paying, say, close to 70,000 shillings a month.
Right.
For the next 10 years. Yet you could afford to rent somewhere at about, say, 40,000 shillings, almost same type of house, same comforts.
Right.
And then invest that money and to give you a passive income. So that's where the debate has to be. But once you have a passive income, build. Feel free to build. But don't build before you have the passive income. Don't lock up the capital.
Right.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of people who rent get a bad rep as if they do not have a long-term plan.
Yeah.
There's that lingering debate and judgment about, I mean, are you serious? You have a whole family. I saw your wife is pregnant again. You don't own a home? How can you not own a home? And as you drive on some of the major estates, you'll see a lot of billboards about how simple it is to own a home.
Yeah.
But yet again, on the flip side, we see a lot of comments about, I got conned by an agent, by a property company that promised me heaven on earth. There was no manna. There was no such project. There was no such property. And owning a home is a commitment. It's a big deal. There's young people who hear of it. Some of them are first-time owners. They come from a generation of, families where nobody has ever owned anything. Where do you get the information, the education of what's a con, what's true? Because again, there is a huge desire of wanting to own a home. It seems to be very vague and sketchy. It's like you're just risking it.
Yeah, everybody thinks of it as a status symbol. So separate the status symbol from owning a home, because there's always someone with a better house than you.
Always.
There's always a better place to live. So just think about the comforts. And I've seen a lot of young people push themselves to buy or build houses outside Nairobi, where they have to travel for 2 to 3 hours, sometimes in the morning and in the evening. I'd say to them, there's no point of doing all that. I'm not trying to discourage people from owning houses outside Nairobi where they have to wade through the traffic.
Right.
It makes sense for some people who, say, for example, if it's you and your spouse, one of you works in that general area,
right.
Your kids' schools are in that area, then it's okay for you to sacrifice. But what doesn't make sense is for you to go build, you spend about maybe 5-6 million you've built outside Nairobi, but you and your spouse have to travel to Nairobi every day. How much money are you spending on fuel?
I've seen that come up on the timeline.
Yeah.
You know, the
How
daily
much money?
commute as well. No one is
Even for
factoring
your
that
kids.
in. Even for the
your
kids.
Yeah.
Right. You have
So-
to pay a lot of that.
Yeah, a home should be a convenience, not an inconvenience.
Right.
So when it gets to the point where you're spending more money on transport, so for example, say the average person in traffic would spend about 4,000 shillings a week. So if you're a two-car household, that's 8,000 shillings a week or every 2 weeks. So at the end of the month, we're talking about 16 to 20,000 shillings on transport alone. Then you're going to pay about 40 to 50,000 shillings to transport your kids to Nairobi. So when you do the total cost of that month, you're spending close to 40 to 50,000 shillings.
Right.
Yeah. And telling yourself you're no longer paying rent. But the expense of traveling from your home to where you work or where your kids go to school, the net effect is
You
zero.
didn't quite calculate that well.
Yeah. So don't think. So think about it as a home should be a convenience.
Right.
Think about the quality of lives. So a lot of people will say, okay, I've seen an apartment. It's affordable. Let me buy the apartment and live there.
Right.
What's the quality of life in that apartment? Are there water issues? Are there? So think about first the quality of life
Right.
before you decide to buy. Whatever you buy, think about things beyond money. There are comforts that money won't afford you. A good night's sleep, how long you can sleep. You know, you can have a very good house, all the fittings, finishings,
I like that you pointed that
Yeah.
out. You know, you have a home, but you're the guy always
Yeah.
on the road,
Yeah, you're
always
never
on the
there.
move. Interesting question came up on the timeline. It was all about, you know, what are some of the top areas that people like to buy property in. Someone asked that on the timeline, said, ask your guest about this one. Which is the hotspot? Which is the area that people are now, because there's always trends. There's always going to be trends. I remember about 5 years ago, most people like to move to Kiambu, and it seemed to be the next big place that people want to move to. This keeps changing from time to time. What are the factors that influence, you know, the areas that trend from time to time?
Yeah, what we call trunk infrastructure. Trunk infrastructure is access to roads, water, electricity, all the services. So you'll see someone tell you, 25 minutes from the CBD. Yeah, so most people will buy because it's 25 minutes from the CBD. But once you factor in traffic, it's 2 hours. So always be clever about it. So and that's why I'd advise people, those places that look hot, yes, you can buy the land now.
Yes.
But don't develop to live there.
Right.
If you've already bought and built and it's become an inconvenience, rent it out. Rent it out, check off the rent and live closer to where you work or where your kids go to school. Improve the quality of life within that home.
Right.
Or if you have already bought and suddenly your spouse doesn't have any other source of income, find them something to do around there. Find a school that's close to there for your kids. So focus more on the trend, the quality of life. So those trunk infrastructure and amenities is what people sell. So
Right.
they'll tell you there are schools being built here, there. But before that school gets to the quality that you want your kid to go to, also think about that. Yeah. So all those issues, all those things that make property hot. They look good on paper, but think about it from where you are.
Can I send a special shout out to the graphic designers that create these ads we see and the billboards? Let me tell you, you look at that poster, and then they always have like white people pointing at a nice LED ceiling kitchen with top of the range kitchenware, and you're thinking, when am I ever going to get wooden flooring?
They're selling
When am I going to
quality
get
of
this?
life.
Quality of life seems to be the emphasis. Which brings me to another question that has come up on the timeline. Those guys make houses look amazing. Then you head there. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. Apartment living seems to be a letdown, and there's a lot of people who feel like, I would love to live in Nairobi, right? But I think a lot of, and you mentioned amenities, a lot of the construction going on seems to have young people seem as if they are not raising children, and they want bachelor glossy pads, and it's not practical for family life.
Yeah.
I mean, just the other day, driving past Kileleshwa, you cannot find a play area for children. You cannot find a balcony that doesn't look like a suicide mission. It's scary to look at. And you're thinking, what happened to the 80s plans where you had a garden? And so a lot of people are also moving out of the city because you can construct a place that is actually real to live and raise children in. What is this trend about? Apartment after apartment block, lesser places to walk, lesser places to cycle. I even saw if you're disabled, I mean, you are in danger.
Yeah, if you think about it, it's about commercializing your property. So if you're the one building, you want to make as much money out of the property as possible.
Right, shrink it.
Yeah, which is where now the codes that the city is supposed to provide and the government is supposed to provide are supposed to kick in.
Right.
They're supposed to say you must have at least, even I've seen even the most basic, leave alone the play area, even parking. You're told, you have to wake up your neighbor.
Can I please?
Yes. I have a show at 6 a.m, so I leave at 4, so I have to wake everyone up.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I'm the first one home because my show ended at 10, so I just go in and I have to wake everyone up. So you must also think about these things even when you're looking for a place to rent. What quality of life will you give your family? So the thing about apartments is it's owned by someone else, so you can't force them to do. But you can also invest in some of those places.
Right.
So you can talk to your landlord and say, I'm willing to put up a grill here and do this and do. It should not be your responsibility, but it's for your own safety. I've seen apartments where they say no children are allowed. The day you get pregnant, they tell you
Are you
9 months. Yeah.
Wait, no. I've heard about pets. I've heard about pets.
They're
Don't bring
clear.
birds. Don't bring birds and any four-legged animal here.
Yeah.
But children?
There are places that are very clear that this is not family living.
I
And
mean, I've seen
think
that
such
on wedding
people-
invitations.
Yeah,
but
such
I'm not
people
seeing
should
it.
be applauded because they're telling you it's very simple.
Yes.
This is a risk for children. We are not willing to invest in the quality that. But the people who do mass market then should take those things into consideration.
Right.
So when you're doing the renovations for the house and it's a new couple coming in and they have children, that balcony that you want to take sunset photos from, the previous guy was a bachelor or the previous lady who was living their life YOLO, #sunset,
Hashtag
is moving out.
Right.
Then this new couple is coming in. You can tell them, okay, you've paid your deposit. I will put up a grill. But no, when you're moving out, I will deduct it from. Because they were going to pay a deposit anyway. I will deduct it from that. And so there are ways of doing it, but nobody's thinking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I also feel that some people do not realize that they have options. I mean, owning a home sounds like, oh, it can never happen for me. But when you pointed that out, because whoever owns that property developed it in the way that they felt they wanted to develop it, that's why home ownership is so attractive. Because you feel I can create the life that I want. Talk to someone who just recently got married and you're paying rent, not because you want to. It's the best option available. Your job is not secure, so you cannot really commit yourself to paying a mortgage. Your wife is due. And you don't even have a shags, because I've seen a lot of people saying, I can move to my home in Kericho or in Kisumu, I will build back home. There's a lot of back home. There's someone who does not have a shags.
Yeah.
What do you tell this person? And what are the options for this person? But one thing I do see is that it's actually possible
it's
own a home.
It's possible to own a home. For that couple that is new,
Yes.
let's start with the ones who are not yet married but are engaged and are planning on a 5 million shilling wedding.
Right.
Both of us know that bubble burst. The marriage is a real thing.
It is.
The wedding is nothing. So spend less on the activities that lead
Yes.
to the marriage,
Right.
and more on the activities that you need when you're married. So start planning to buy land as convenient as possible to where you live or where you want to live. When you buy that land, you can be both speculative about it or forward looking about it. So instead of buying a quarter an acre, buy half an acre, knowing that you can subdivide it and sell. The subdivision, when you sell, that money will be at least a good start for you to start building. So when
Yes.
the prices appreciate.
Yes.
So you can buy the land now, plan to develop later.
Right.
2, for the people who have a shags, let me burst your bubble. Yeah, there's someone who is living in your shags.
Right.
There's someone who, even if you have 5 acres of coffee or tea, there's someone taking care of that 5 acres of coffee or tea. Why do you want to go and subdivide their land, the thing that they've been earning their income from, yeah, and turning them into dependents? Because when you retire, you'll go there, you'll build your big mansion, and you'll have taken a piece of land away from them, and they'll always be coming to you for handouts. Why don't you help them empower themselves, but you find somewhere else to settle and retire? Because think about it, if, for example, most of us, our generation, maybe you have 3 or 4 siblings.
Right.
The generation before that, they were 8.
You're right.
So your grandfather's land has been subdivided to the point where it's just burial plots. Let's not lie to ourselves. Yeah. If there are 4 of you, that means if your father had an acre, now you have a quarter. If you have 2 children, that means you now have, each of your kids has an 1/8.
Henry.
So think about it in that aspect. And that land was good for farming, but now, if you just build a house, you're wasting the potential of that
you
land.
literally bursted that bubble.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's not as easy as it sounds.
And how many cousins do you have? If your grandfather had 10 children, how many cousins do you have? They all want a piece of that land. Some of them were not lucky enough to come to the city like you, so they and they're living from that land. So when you say you're going back, you're just going to look for feuds and conflicts.
There's
over
also
where
that
your border
dynamic.
ends.
There's also that dynamic because there's other
You don't
people
want to
involved.
retire to that.
Right.
Who wants to retire to that? Yeah. So if you have the ability, buy somewhere where you know you can develop. If you plan to retire into farming, then you need more land. So plan with that in mind. And if you've bought the land, find ways of extracting value from it. Put up a greenhouse, lease it out to someone to farm. Even if it's 30,000 shillings a year, it's still money.
Right.
Yeah. Just make sure your land is not idle and that it gives you some value so that when you need the land, there's something to do with it. Don't just buy and leave it. Because when you
Wow.
buy and leave it, someone might even encroach.
I feel like this conversation is never going to end. We are on your timeline. Spice FM KE. It's at 5 p.m. Henry Githaiga, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I feel like we need to channel more questions on your Twitter. That's at Henry Githaiga. Thank you so much.